talk about planning. And this is the last section in this group of examples of ArcGIS in action. Back when we talked about the estimated population growth, we have to cover many more millions and a couple billion people in 20 years. Well, planning's going to play a key role, right? Well, to support our planners, we have a new product called ArcGIS Urban. It's an immersive 3D experience for planners and other staff to better make decisions based on the information that they have, incorporating 3D and other resources. But let's take a look. Nicole.
I'm here in ArcGIS Urban looking at the city of Boston, which is notable because the city of Boston just created its first citywide plan in over 50 years called Imagine Boston 2030. And the objective of this plan is it seeks to balance the historical preservation of Boston with the explosive growth that the city is experiencing, and in turn help everyone be successful, help enable their citizens and inspire their businesses that are there. So this citywide plan is a really big motivator for Boston to use something like ArcGIS Urban. Now, there's a few different things I can do in the software. And just as a quick zoom in and zoom out, I see the Boston Commons. And these building in red are projects that are underway. So let me show you an example of a specific project. This one is called Winthrop Square Tower. And I get an understanding of what the project is all about at a high level. And panning around my map, I'm seeing the status indicated by the color of other ongoing development projects. So while maybe for GIS folks like you, the notion of exploring a 3D scene may not seem new and exciting, but for planners to explore a 3D scene with authoritative GIS information, that can be a really major amplification in the way that they conduct their projects. So this project has a web page, which is linked here, and it's powered by ArcGIS Hub. And we're seeing an artist's rendering of the future building, a description of the building that was once a parking garage, and now it's seeking to become a comprehensive living and shopping building, and there's even an event space. We also have an embedded web app on this hub site, like many hub sites, that highlights a specific type of analysis or data. In this case, the shadow cast by the proposed building on the historic Boston Commons. So in this scenario, the initial height of the building was actually deemed unacceptable based on the impact it would have on this very historical, the nation's oldest park. So this type of analysis is something that was very impactful and that you would want to share with your constituents and your community in something like a hub site. Now, back in urban, projects are a great way to keep track of what's upcoming and what's going on. But another major component is zoning, and this is what these plans contain. So I want to look at the southboston.av corridor and edit some of the zoning and tell you a little bit about what urban can do in this space. So we're seeing still all the 3D buildings, and we're still seeing the projects by their status, but now we're also looking at the zoning and the different colors representing the different zoning codes. So this area is largely industrial and zoned for manufacturing and industry, and then there's a kind of a community that is adjacent to it. And normally zoning codes are very thick legal documents. They're very complex, large printed books, essentially, of all of the information that is summarized here, including the maximum height that this particular zone can accommodate and the floor to area ratio, etc. Now, we're looking at the existing conditions for southboston.av today. This is scenario 0. But the power of urban is being able to explore future scenarios. For example, if we keep these zoning codes as they are, what might this area look like under a business as usual way of building? Now, we're still here with this purple industrial zoning, so what I've noticed that could be built out is mostly a lot of long and low buildings, like Amazon distribution centers. And we have an idea of how this potential growth, how this potential construction might look adjacent to this community. Now, what if the zoning code were to change? What if it was fluid? I see the train tracks here, so I speculate that we're going to have still industry and manufacturing in this area, but what if some areas along these more inner streets could be amended with the zoning code? In this case, we'll look at the proposed zone change, so in another future scenario, and see what would happen if we were able to do more and these zoning codes were fluid. So now we're seeing a rendering of a possible scenario in which the buildings are taller and they're more numerous. They have different setbacks, and they're not just the long and low Amazon distribution centers, but maybe these are mixed-use buildings depending on this particular code. I can see all of the detail about it and edit it if needed, but what's really nice is I can immerse myself in this particular scenario. So once I drag in my little character, I'll see side by side the proposed zone change scenario as well as how the street view of this area looks today. So in red, we have a project that's underway, and we can see indeed this is verified by the street level imagery. This project is indeed being constructed. And you can move through the scene as if you're really there and understand, as a planner, what does this mean if the zoning code changes, if the city council votes to change the zoning code? How will this impact residents who live in this area? How will it impact the livability or the walkability of the streets? And what's really nice is that these proposed zone changes are all kept siloed and are not touching the underlying authoritative GIS data. So let me show you what I mean by that. I almost jumped ahead to show you how to create a model. However, while I'm still in Urban, let me first jump back to one more piece of data that's powered by ArcGIS Online, and that is the notion of indicators. So, indicators are various data sets that can be demographic, they can be related to crime, they could be related to the natural environment. And I'd like to add the indicator that represents flood hazard risk, because as Boston is a coastal community, it's important that planners understand how a rising sea level is going to impact population and impact existing areas, and how they can mitigate this as they are considering their future planning projects. So now I've covered the three elements of urban: projects, plans, and indicators, and now I'll show you exactly how we get started with creating an urban model of your own. You can start in your ArcGIS Online organization and create an urban model like so. Give it a title, tags, summary, and the results are these four items. So we have the urban model, as well as a few different databases and also a database view. So this ensures that as you are creating these scenarios, you are not actually overwriting any of the data that the land records folks work so hard to maintain. And once you've created a model, there are only a few bits of information you need to get started. So I'll open up my new blank model and mention that you don't even have to have a 3D base map. The primary components that you need are to have zoning and parcels. So let me first add some parcel types, and I'm going to do this from my ArcGIS Online organization. Now, if you're a planner and you're part of an ArcGIS Online organization in a city, you can reference these parcels that have possibly been maintained by your land records department. And on the flip side, if you're part of the land records department, you can make sure these parcels are available to your planning department users. So I'm going to add those, and I would do some field matching and click OK, and it will import all 635 parcels. So I must have a very small town. 100 by 100, there they go. And then the next thing I would do is add my Zoning. Now, I'll have some default options, and I could add more zoning types one by one and edit them individually. And this could be very time consuming. So rather, what I'd like to do is import the zoning types from feature layer symbology. So in this case, perhaps the planners have given a shapefile to the land information people who have then published the zoning districts as a feature layer, and now they're available in ArcGIS Online. Hopefully there wasn't too much shapefile exchanging, but now I can import these based off the symbology of that layer that was shared between departments, and you can see how long that would have taken me to enter one at a time. So that's a great opportunity for collaboration between these last two agencies, these last two groups of users that Sarah and I have highlighted, land records and planning. Now, if you do have those two types of data available, zoning and parcels, even if you don't have a 3D base map, that's okay. You can get started with Urban. But if you'd rather dip your toe in more gingerly, we encourage you to go to urban.arcgis.com, and this is how you can deploy a sample city model. So you can choose a very small city, perhaps that has 635 parcels, and set up Urban if that represents where you live and work. Or you can choose a community like any of these other examples and get started by setting up Urban with the sample city today.
Whew, wow. So as you can see, this is pretty transformational. Now, 3D isn't going to be so new to your planners, but leveraging 3D in this immersive experience and with the collaboration between all the GIS content, that's probably a game changer. So look into it. It's not scary. We have multiple options, as Nicole said, to dip your toes in and try it out and better understand how it could be leveraged within your organization. As we've talked about already, planning is key. Just in normal life, but we also know that if we're going to be growing population up to 9 billion people in 20 short years, we need to help our planners do their job more efficiently and more effectively, and ArcGIS Urban is one way to do that. So to recap, we were just talking about 5 different areas where you can put ArcGIS in action, starting with law enforcement, then public works, engineering, land records, and finally planning. And we did this all in the context of starting with going after achieving high-level initiatives from safe communities, being resilient and sustainable, well-run and healthy communities. These are all important, and it will take amplifying GIS to empower more users throughout your organization to be successful.